You're back again. Really? What is it with you? Kiru-san, the loan consolation thing turned out to be a scam. Just like you said, they almost got me. Is that so? Good on you for seeing through it. I don't know how I can thank you, Kiryu-san. If you escaped that scam, what are you doing back here? A friend of mine a friend of mine's also have debt troubles. He asked if he could borrow just 10,000 yen to help pay them off. I gave it to him as a good friend should. But right after, this friend of mine skipped town. Wow. Man. And since I paid 10,000 yen on his loan, the loan company is holding me responsible as the guarantor for my friend's loans. Oh, rip. I never wanted to be his guarantor, and now they're demanding that I pay off the rest of his loan. What the heck were you thinking? You're about to kill yourself over your own debt. Why would you think you could help your friends with his? There you go. If you can't help yourself, being nice and try to help with someone else with the inability to help yourself, that's where you get it. That's how that happens. Well, he was in a lot of trouble, and I, of all people, would know how stressful that kind of debt can be. I felt really bad for you. You would also be the kind of people that would understand how difficult it is, and you have no solution for it as well. It is true, though, there is some merit to trying to help someone when you're stressed out, but helping someone with the same problem that you have is an entirely different story. And this is misery deserves company kind of thing, where you can empathize with someone in a similar situation, but understanding that you're in the similar situation makes you the least logical, least rational person to be solving that problem. Not only did you become sentimental and emotionally compromised because you can relate to a person with the same problem, it nearly guarantees that you would be making an irrational response due to an emotional compromise. And that is unfortunate, but it does happen really often. Like, it's see, here's the thing, right? Slight deep cut. It is a really common prophylactic. It's very cathartic. Sorry, not prophylactic. It's very cathartic for individuals to share misery in company in order, like, misery deserves company. It can be very consoling to understand that there are other people with similar problems than you, but typically that's from a uh emotional stability standpoint. Like, you're trying to find emotional stability, not get rational solutions. You're looking for conciliation, right? Like a way to elevate yourself in together to find clarity. But offering to help solve a problem that you cannot help yourself, that's, regardless of how nice you are, right? The Regardless of how nice you want to be and how altruistic you want to be, that's a really dangerous recipe. And this isn't this doesn't just fly with normal things. Like, in a professional setting, this is kind of one of the gold standards of not getting involved personally. Like, when people mix professionalism, right, with, like, you will, it's a human condition to avoid or be able to know when you become too attached to your, say, your client, your specimen, your, whatever your point of reference is. The idea is, at some point, you have to be able to compartmentalize that. If not, the greatest favor you can do out of the compassion in your heart is to direct that person to another person who doesn't have that problem to help. And that's typically like a sometimes, for example, a very compassionate influencer, for example, have a lot of experience. They know how it feels. They are very popular and well respected with their portrayal of compassion. It does not make them any more qualified to provide solutions if they aren't detached from it. And the idea of content creators and influencers is what makes them really successful and popular is because they're emotionally empathetic. Like, but that is not, that actually detracts from the reliability of their solutions and their hacks. Because a lot of their content is also emotionally attached. So, what I mean is like, in influencers, the reason why they're really great, like entertaining or like charming and charismatic, is the craft is emotional. A lot of times, like they're influencers, they're very emotionally attached, but it makes them less and less qualified to provide solutions to the things they're emotional about. It's often worth making a disclaimer like, this is how I feel about things. But you should seek a professional, an expert who don't do it for emotional clout. They do it to get paid. And you might be thinking like, oh yeah, but what about bedside manners? And like, there's a time and place in it. It's a balance. But you're going to have both. It's just when it comes to an influencer, their craft will make them biased towards emotionally charged solutions. And when you're paying someone who has some bedside manners, if you're paying them to do their job, they are less emotionally invested in being the good guy or being sentimental than doing their job. And it's a balancing act because if you have too much of that, they could be cold, right? But the idea is when you're solving a solution, often being cold is more consistent than being emotionally compromised. And that's kind of the idea behind this. And it's they're both sides have good intentions or like have intentions of completing a task when agreed upon. It's just this is the more common one that gets championed, where someone's like, oh, well, it's the thought that counts. And I understand that. It's the thought that counts. This person's really nice and they want to help someone, but they are so in trouble themselves. And you get into this cycle so often. Like, for example, and this is a really tough one to swallow, and it happens a lot. Uh, dieting. Dieting is a big one. So basically, like, you have someone that's like, oh, I'm gonna try this diet because I need to lose weight. It's like, wait, let's do this together. And it's another friend who is also struggling with the same problem. And they're gonna try together. So they're gonna emotionally support each other. But neither one has the solution. So ultimately, you're gonna reduce your chance of success because neither of those individuals have a clear vision of an alternative solution. They are both emotionally compromised, solving the same problem. However, the biggest silver lining in this case is it's still better than one person doing it themselves. Most of the time. Most of the time. But it's still like 30%, 70%. Like what I mean is 30% of the time, both of those people will fail even harder because they reinforce each other's problems. They become enablers for what's keeping them from it. But 70% of the time when it's positive thinking, when you have two people, it can foster enough motivation back and forth. But that would mean that they are actually different people as opposed to empathetic with each other. One could be more motivated and one could be less motivated, but because of the difference in motivation, it also makes them empathize less. But they have the same problem, but there were other factors that doesn't involve the specific thing that they got together with that differentiates them. So when you're trying to solve a problem that's really emotionally bound, you're looking for someone who, as as much as you can trust emotionally, that doesn't have the same problem as you do. And then you complement each other. Like you compensate for each other as opposed to I suck, you suck, we all feel like we suck, so let's all hang out together and somehow we feel like we suck less, which that doesn't like logically doesn't pan out. It often leads to more suckage. So unfortunately that's kind of like uh it's not a subjective thing. Like you can still gamble. It's just it's a low success rate. If you're feeling depressed and you decide to hang around depressed people because you can find comfort in knowing that other people are depressed, ultimately in the long run, your success of becoming magically not depressed is not going to go away. You have to you somehow find the ability to find someone who doesn't have that same problem, maybe in a different form. So like one could be depressed about their weight, and maybe one could be depressed about not being fast enough or like not performing well. Those technically have the same end result, but the process of leading to that depression doesn't overlap. So, in fact, that would be a great pairing where, yes, these are two depressed people, but they're depressed about complementary um, problems. So, one could actually inspire the other one, and then one could inspire the other one, like, like almost complementary, like compensation, like even though depression is presented. And in the end of the day, if you have a problem that persists, it ultimately comes down to like my one trifecta, right? One of the trifectas. It's your support system. Who do you surround yourself with? If you have a friend and that friend does something, you you have to know that it is some form of reflection of yourself. And your friends offer opportunities to compensate. And that's just kind of unfortunate. But this story cuts real deep because I've been the third wheel so often in my younger life, but I didn't really solve the problems. I was an enabler because I was just that person that cleaned up. Basically, I didn't provide solution. I didn't help compromise. I just cleaned it up. Like I was the third wheel in cleaning things up, and I was too young and naive to know how to clean up. I'm like how to not just clean up, but repair and rehabilitate. Like offer people roads to enable themselves. So instead, it was just like watching train wrecks like go at it, and then they just wreck harder. And and what you do is you put a band-aid on it when you're a